Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone out there, I hope you're having a fantastic day. And hey, you're ready for some Computer America, where in the second part of the show, time permitting, we will be doing computer and technology news. That's where we stay up to date on all the latest news. And hey, we try to keep you informed because we do it full time, and man, we can barely keep up with it ourselves. We can't imagine having a job and doing the same. So you definitely want to stick around for that. But in the first part of the program, we have it dedicated as usual to a guest, but not so usual. We have, I believe this will be the first time the company will be joining us, but Clario. If you haven't heard about Clario, clario.co, if you'd like to check them out. But hey, we're going to be talking to the CEO of the company all about, well, cybersecurity. It's it's a very popular topic, and that's fortunate, I guess, of course, for our guest, because it's a good business to be in, but it's unfortunate for businesses, individuals, things like that, because let's face it, this is crime, and essentially we're saying, hey, there's crime is afoot. So to keep your business safe, to keep you safe, we really enjoy having guests like this here on the program talking with us. But before we get into that, computeramerica.com. That will have a link in the show notes to our guest website, any topics that we discuss, anything that we talk about. You can find it right there at our homepage. So, you don't have to run and find something to write it down with, or pull out your phone and, search it right there on the spot. After the program, if you want to find something, just check out our website. Let's see, while you're there, check out articles, reviews, stuff like that, contests, find us on social media, blah, blah, blah. And of course, check out the live video feed if you so choose. So with all that being said, morning announcements done, we're going to go ahead and get into the show with our guest. And I said it before, Clario, Mr. Alun Baker will be joining us. He is the CEO of the company. We're going to go ahead and unmute Mr. Alun. And Alun, thank you so much for joining us here on Computer America. How you doing?
I'm very well, Ben, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. It's so I gave a little bit of an introduction. We have had cybersecurity experts on in the past, and as I said before, it is a very popular topic here on the show. So our audience is not completely novice, but as with every show, we never assume prior knowledge on to the listener. So we're gonna make sure to explain everything to the fullest. But the first thing we should explain is a bit of yourself, your background, and Clario, the company. Where did it get its start?
Hi, right, Ben. My background, I'm Welsh, in case you can't tell the difference between an English and Welsh accent, and also the unusual spelling of my name. So I'm from a coal mining area in South Wales, and I've been in the tech industry for 25 plus years through companies like Oracle, Tibco, and also I've chaired 4 companies so far, many to successful exits. I started Clario in October last year,
Hmm.
which is only 5 months ago, but spent 12 months prior to that going through a transformation program in a prior company, which we then absorbed into Clario when we launched it. So Clario, in a nutshell, is the world's first consumer digital security and privacy solution, which integrates software with technical experts on hand 24/7. And there's a very, very simple reason for that, Ben. Anybody that claims they can protect you 100% of the time with just software is just misleading people. Very large companies can't protect your data. How can anybody assume that they can protect an individual? So we have experts on hand to answer problems, solve problems for you, and guide you through some of the really tough, difficult moments.
And really, I mean, I've been doing this for I think long enough now. With Computer America for man, about 12 years now. But I got to say, and like really focusing on it for like the past 8, 9 years, and you've been in this field for even longer. That must have been a pretty harsh realization. Although a lot of experts have kind of embraced it, saying that you mentioned just software wise is not a perfect solution. There was a time when the guidelines were have anti-malware on your computer and you'll be safe, and have the best one and you'll be the safest. And it's like everyone wanted the perfect anti-malware, antivirus software. But what's changed? Well, why has that? Why is software not the only solution anymore?
So, Ben, it's interesting. And I think this is one of the big problems. People just don't understand this problem. So the latest stats that we've seen suggest that cybercrime costs will go up to $6 trillion by the end of 2021. And it's grown at 35% a year. So if you look in the US, ID theft happens roughly every 2 seconds. And 1.2 million data records in the US are lost every day on average. So whatever anyone is doing just simply isn't working. And unfortunately, some of the statements antivirus and anti-malware companies say that use our product, you're 100% protected, is at best misleading, because virus is just a small proportion of the threat that happens to you. This is malware tracking. It's grabbing data off websites through things like Magicart that steals your identity. It's tracking social media, building up profiles on people. So the thing has got just so much more complex, and also so much easier for people to buy and trade data on the dark web to make cybercrime that much easier and that much more prolific. And
So
unfortunately,
yeah.
I just think nobody's doing much about it. So
Well, and really, there are trends that we're going to talk about that are pretty alarming, because as this problem is getting worse, and I feel like the perpetrators are getting more sophisticated and probably to a larger extent more connected, which may be even worse, because it's not just that one hacking group or one hacker has your information. It's that, hey, now they all have the same information, and they're able to they're able to put it into a giant file, and hey, they do know your mother's maiden name, and they do know your street address that you grew up on. So targeted stuff can be very easy, but of course, we can also talk about the scale and the masses. You threw out a couple of statistics there. If you'd like to go over those real quick, and I apologize if I'm making you repeat yourself, but what is the current scale of the problem for individuals, for businesses? I mean, we've made this a point to have people such as yourself here on the show, and we say all the time, don't click random email links, don't have good anti-malware on your computer, so on and so forth, the basics. And it's just getting worse. What is the current scale of cybersecurity?
yeah, as I said, so the estimates at the moment suggest that it'll rise to $6 trillion in cost globally by the end of 2021. And looking at it just from a US perspective, as I said, it's ID stolen on average every 2 seconds. And we also see massive amounts of data being lost. You see $4 billion of fines for companies like Facebook. And strangely, Ben, they only talk about the fine. BA had a $300 million circa fine recently, and they talk about the fine. They don't talk about the damage to the consumer and the individual of somebody losing your data. They also send you out a pretty inane email to say, hey, Ben, we may have lost your data. Don't know if you've seen in the news. Well, the stats suggest that on average, it takes large corporations 257 days to find a hacker that's been in their system. So in that time, if they've taken your data and they're trading it on the dark web, they have had access and they can do all that damage, really, and you're none the wiser as the consumer. And then to get such a simple email from somebody to say, hey, Ben, change your email, change your password. It's just actually companies starting to look like they care much more about their personal reputation than they do about yours.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that you could probably pull up more examples than I could, but one of our go-tos is, of course, Uber, where they were dealing, kind of behind the scenes for over a year with people who compromised their system, and they were paying ransom. They were, in negotiations about not releasing, and again, like you said, total reputation damage control versus actually letting consumers protect themselves and actually take steps that would, mitigate the problem.
Yeah, and time is of the essence, Ben, right? What people should be saying to you is, hey, Ben, we've been hacked. We have no idea they've been in here. What we suggest is you change your password and email on every website where you use your credit card or bank details. You also notify your bank that this has happened to look out for anything unusual or exceptional. That's the kind of advice they should give you, but they don't want to alarm you because they don't want you to realize that what's actually happened is incredibly damaging for consumers. So, you know what the credit score market is like in the US. If somebody has credit damage because somebody delivers a fridge to Iowa, changes your address, they have your various data points on you, including your social security number, suddenly they can control every access to your life and you're completely unaware of what's happening.
So,
go on, sorry.
Well, I also want to mention that there's another trend that goes on, that's not exactly malicious. It's not someone who hacked into the server, something like that. We're noticing that so often the problem is also that are also the basics, and I believe this is what really you would kind of advocate for, but. Actually, I mentioned earlier that we do computer and technology news on the show when we have time, and one of the stories that we have lined up for today, this one actually coming out from Mashable, but it's a pretty big story. Google had a technical glitch that happened November 21st, 2019, and it lasted for about 4 days. Where when people who use Google Takeout to request to export their data, people were sent other people's cloud data with Google, and they were downloading complete strangers' photos, videos, things like that. That was a technical glitch. We've seen other instances where, let's say, Facebook or Twitter have databases full of, stored in plain text usernames and emails and passwords on servers that were not password protected, just sitting out there, usually through things like Amazon Web Services. So, Alan, what I'm getting at here is there's the malicious side that good practices and protection can help you with, but a lot of these compromises seem to happen at the hands of just people who aren't properly putting passwords on their databases. They aren't crossing their T's and dotting their I's. Have you noticed that? Is that an issue, or is it just that people are looking for that kind of compromise, and so it's just coming up more often? Why do you think that is?
I think quite a few things are happening there. There is a lot of state-sponsored cybercrime, so there's a lot of investment being put into the perpetrators of cybercrime. Some of it's affecting election results, but a lot of it's actually hacking into banks, it's hacking into insurance companies, and it's just generally, obviously, raising money through crime. And I think just the threat matrix itself, the threat horizon has grown so enormously. So Clario protects you at home on your network. It protects your data by encrypting it. Every time you buy something online, we disguise your IP address that's notifying who you are and where you're buying something from. We're protecting every one of your devices. Mobile devices particularly have become more prolific now, as well as desktops like Apple. But also then looking at every incoming piece of email. It's got so sophisticated. You can have an email tomorrow for IRS, and it looks like it's from them now. It's not from Joe at Google 457 when you look at the source address now. It's actually much more sophisticated. So we are looking at every point of intrusion into your life. And if at any time, Ben, somebody takes your data from Facebook or Twitter or from Uber,
Right.
and it's traded on the dark web, we will notify you to say this is happening, because we're constantly scanning for our customers to say, Ben, email plus this password combination is just being traded.
That and of course that is something that I think a lot of people have never even considered having access to, is that yes, we can, we're alerted when we may be one of millions of people affected by a data breach, but that's the end of it. That everything else is on you, and we are never really made aware of what are the ramifications? What is the outcome of this data breach? So let's talk about what it is that, currently if you're watching the video screen, we have, kind of your values and, kind of what you feel our listeners and of course your customers are, kind of deserving of. Talk about Clario, the service, and what it is that I guess you do for your customers.
Yeah, so Ben, for us, one of the reasons we think cybercrimes become more prolific is because people are just too afraid of the technology. It's so complicated. If you look at typical antivirus companies, they use technical terminology that, unless you're in this industry or you really personally take notice of it, it's very hard to understand. And you fundamentally just want to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
You get a flashing wheel that says, I've looked at 16 gigabytes of data and found 15 viruses. And nobody really understands the consequences of any of that type of approach anymore. You get warned when you go on a hotspot. You really don't know whether that's important if I'm on Starbucks' hotspot or not. So what we do is bring in a completely different user interface and user experience. So the type of thing that will happen with us, Ben, is you might come home one evening and you will get on your phone, on your iPhone, on your watch,
Mm-hmm.
or any device to say, hey, Ben, welcome home. Just to let you know, there's been 2 attempted intrusions on your home wireless hub. Don't worry, it's all sorted.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's the user experience you have with us. It's not complicated. Or it may say, hey, Ben, you've had 2 attempts. We fixed one. One of them has a problem. And we will then drop a screen down for you to say, you need to speak to one of our experts now. Click a time that's good for you. So it's not waiting 40 minutes on a telephone. Somebody then contacts you and literally says, Ben, the problem is this. Let me tell you how to fix it, or if you prefer it, we'll come onto your device and fix it for you. And having access to that level of expertise is just kind of unheard of, Ben, and to be on tap 24/7.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, and of course, sorry for stepping on you here, but of course, we're watching your promo video right here, and I think it has a screenshot of what we're looking at, I'm sorry, really what you're talking about with the dashboard and all that kind of thing, and it does kind of remind me of the malware, or the anti-malware that people should have, except it's much more encompassing. It's it's monitoring your transactions, your data, your network, like you were mentioning, your devices. Doing all that is not an easy task. What do you think was a fundamental change in technology? Of course, here on the show, we've heard a lot about artificial intelligence, machine learning, whatever it is you want to call it. We have heard of, just more access to more data and, being able to process it much faster. What do you think allowed you to start up a company like this just recently to, monitor so many different things it's not even like looking at the past and saying, oh, well, here's what happened. You're trying to do this in real time. That's not easy. What's allowing you to do this?
Yeah, we've integrated some third-party technologies, Ben. So we've looked at what is the best at finding malware and antivirus in, say, an Apple environment or on mobile devices. We've looked at products around VPN and said which is the best performing. But for us, the two real uniques was bringing the knowledge we had in areas like Apple particularly, but also thinking about what makes somebody engage. And it's always about that user interface and user experience. So
Mm-hmm.
when you sign up on Clario, we ask you a number of questions and we totally personalize it. You don't want to see certain things, but if you're, for example, constantly on the go, constantly dialing into via hotspots in cafes somewhere, we will make decisions for you. So we will use machine learning and say, right, Ben's modus operandi, the way he works is this. So Ben will automatically switch VPN. We don't talk about VPN to you,
Mm-hmm.
we talk about your identity. So we will protect your identity as soon as you go onto a hotspot. If that's something you want to choose to change yourself or change the settings, you can do it. But our default is to protect you based on the way you behave in your digital life. And that's fundamentally different.
Yeah.
And then the second piece is
Go
that
for it.
integration system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the integration and of course the personalization, like you said, that is very different. Where let's face it, so many companies have one product that they push to millions of customers. There's very little personalization and very little learning. They may have like a whitelist and a blacklist. Usually the blacklist will have websites that are known to push malware and things like that. And anyone who goes on those sites is automatically warned that, hey, the website you're on is not safe, and that's about the extent. And don't get me wrong, those lists are very comprehensive and they're updated all the time. But like you said, it's not personalized. Now, one thing that you mentioned a couple of times here, and I believe I saw it, somewhere around here, and of course we have a question for it about not being for the faint of heart. It's not just about real time. It's not just about, the user interface and that kind of thing. But you mentioned customer support, being able to contact you, being able to talk to a person. That's different. And I've seen a lot of products. They are doing away with talking to people because for one reason or another, either to save cost or they're just tired of people saying, wait, what's a VPN? I don't know why people are doing away with customer support, but it seems to be a pillar of what you're doing.
Yeah, Ben, look, I don't know if you've been through this at any time in the last 12 months or so, despite advances in technology. Every time I've used bots to give me answers, any time I've used any form of automated response mechanisms for customer service, it's just been an appalling experience. And eventually you give up and you try to make a phone call to a remote location somewhere, and it's just as bad an experience because the person you get through to actually is not technical and tries to pass you on to somebody that is.
Right.
Or you have to ask 52 questions about what it is the problem is, and hopefully somebody at the other end will eventually pick something up. So what we have done, we have over 650 technical experts that 90% of the things that people have problems with, we see regularly, and every now and again there'll be an unusual combination that's a little bit more complicated to solve that problem for people. So what we believe is, the problem is so enormous now, the consequence to you can be absolutely catastrophic potentially. But equally, we're also fixing other things. And I don't know if you saw a couple of weeks ago, Ben, the FBI issued a guideline for people saying you should never have your fridge and your smart TV connected to the same network at home as your laptop and your phone.
I did not. And actually, Alan, I'll take a step further. Not only did I not hear that, since then I have purchased a smart fridge, and I have done exactly that. So I've done the opposite.
Yeah. Well, interesting. A lot of people go, well, I don't need to have a smart fridge. But what a lot of people don't realize, for example, the FBI also suggested this, which is go onto your smart TV, switch the microphone off and the camera. By the way, I'm in this industry and I didn't realize they had those things in my smart TV. So the realization is you have to be super technical, and then we can help you with things like that if that's what you want. But it's also the recognition that with the massive growth of Internet of Things, and we're talking about 6 billion devices over the next 2 years, they are saying things like cameras at home, your Nest on the front door, your security cameras all around your house, or even in your nursery, your printer, which is sending messages out about toner levels, it's on the network. And people go, wow, well, why do I care about my fridge? If they're on your network, that means they can get onto your laptop or onto your phone. And people just are not aware of the risk they take with those things. So we can give you advice, guidance on how to protect yourself from that kind of risk.
So and of course, Computer America was out at CES 2020 this year. I believe Clario was out at CES 2020 as well. And you saw the exhibitors there, and of course the other companies that were displaying with you, and it really goes to show that. Some of my favorites included like the automatic cat feeder that is connected to your network and it will send updates to your phone. Of course, smart toilets are going to be everywhere in the next 5 years or so. I mean, just there are few things that we interact with on a day-to-day basis that won't be internet connected. Do you think that something like Clario is the solution to that, where maybe most of it's behind the scenes, but it's delivered to the individual in a simplified manner? Or do you think it should be up to either the network providers, let's say the Linksys, the Netgears, the so on and so forth? Is it up to them? Is it up to the individual? Like, does everyone need some kind of basic knowledge? Or again, Clario, something that will simplify and just, kind of do it for you?
I think it's a choice people need to make themselves to a large degree. I do think there's huge responsibility on companies to have a regulation around, if I'm sticking a device with a chip on a network, then I'd better start thinking about how I protect it. So new standards need to be brought in around this, Ben. It's absolutely critical. But that alone isn't enough. So we don't feel as digital consumers we have enough time or the technical knowledge to choose 16 different options for different devices, different circumstances. So what Clario does is simplify it. We protect your digital life secured, any place, anytime, anywhere, on any device. That's the model that we offer to people. And then when it goes horribly wrong, because there's a chance that could always happen, we'll have an expert on hand for you. But it is complicated. That doesn't mean that the device owners shouldn't try to protect you. But that alone isn't enough, because you could decide to buy something off Amazon tomorrow, or any kind of online e-tailer, and somebody can be waiting, scanning your card and your data, and then tracking you back through your IP to find out exactly who you are. And that's got nothing to do with device protection. This is to do with hackers and cyber criminals laying in wait on almost every area of the internet and every part of your digital life. And you need just complete protection for that.
It's like we said way at the beginning, it's only something that's getting worse. Like you would think that you just laid out the problem very nicely. You would think that once we have an idea of the problem, we could come up with a solution. But the solution, unfortunately, really needs to come down to a personal touch. So we've been talking about Clario and the service and what it is you provide. But I guess one big part of this whole equation that our listeners may be wondering is, well, how or not how well how does it work, but more specifically, is this something for your smartphone? Is this an app that you have to go through and kind of funnel everything through? Is this something you sign up on your browser? Is this software you download on your computer at home? How exactly do you interface with Clario?
It's something you download onto your desktop. We'll launch in beta in the middle of February on Apple desktop initially, and then towards the end of the year on Windows. But also we will launch across all mobile devices. That's both iPhone, Apple, and also Android. And that's an app that comes down onto your phone. So we also, as you saw earlier, provide a dashboard to just make it really easy. And by the way, also make it engaging enough that you want to participate, Ben, because if you look at the screens there, we're the experts. You don't have to be. Let's go. It's all really engaging user experience and user interface. And if you don't have that, you're just going to ignore this stuff as too technical. So by debunking it, we're trying to simplify it and make users engage, because we can't protect you unless you want to be protected. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to take responsibility for this and also enjoy the experience in as much as you can when it comes to cybercrime and protecting yourself, right? So this is a very engaging environment. And we think that some of the companies that have totally disrupted markets in the past few years have done it on the strength of that user interface and user experience, which is the core to everything Clario does.
It's certainly interesting that you're going at this from a consumer perspective. So many companies out there, maybe it's the fact that companies have deeper pockets, or just so much data is funneled through companies that it seems like data protection for enterprise or businesses seems to be much a much more hot route, or a much more
Yeah,
popular
and what
route.
you see,
Yeah.
yeah, Ben, it's interesting you say that, because a lot of our competitors do both. They started in business and now have branched out into consumer. And unfortunately, you look at a lot of the websites, it just sounds like B2B speak. When you look at it business to business, it doesn't sound consumer friendly. And I think that's one of the root causes that we see today in terms of people's either empathy or non-engagement in this. You really need to get engaged, and you need something that makes you want to engage in it. And that's what Clario is trying to do. So also,
Mhm.
by specializing in the consumer world, we understand the speak, we understand the challenges a lot more, and we can personalize this to you. But I think businesses need to think about this as well. Like, Ben, you
Yeah.
have a policy of bring your own device. So you're saying, whilst you're inside my business, you're my employee. Well, that same employee is a consumer the minute he leaves, right? So at home, whatever he does makes him vulnerable, and he brings that back into the business later. So there's a whole education process here. And businesses need to start educating their employees about not just inside my business protection, but how you behave outside. The fact you need to protect yourself on your devices at home, and think about how you do some of the things you do in your digital life today. Just no responsibility.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about some of the features real quick, and one of them that were mentioned a few times, this idea of a VPN. And if I'm reading the material that I have correctly, Bitdefender, NordVPN, both of those very popular and reputable VPNs. Talk about the purpose of a VPN very lightly, and why you
Yeah.
decided to make a partnership with with these companies.
Yeah, again, we have done massive amounts of internal testing on various applications in this market to see how they perform in certain environments. And VPN, if you look at Nord, for example, is a real interesting one. A lot of the time people stop using VPN. It's called a virtual private network. And basically, at a very low level, it protects your identity by disguising who you are. Every device you use has something called an IP address, Internet Protocol, which can track back to you as a person. And that makes you vulnerable. What a VPN does is totally disguises that by bouncing it around different networks and hides who you are. And people initially used to think that was some kind of an unusual thing to do and even somewhat shady, but it actually is super fundamental when you're doing banking transactions, any online retail activity, e-tail activity. You just need your data protected. You need your credit card protected by disguising who you are. So even if somebody does skim at your card, it's a lot harder for them to track down and back to the person who used it.
Mm.
And we chose Nord because it performs so well across multiple devices, not just desktops, but also on mobile. And some people stop using VPN because it slows things down. And what we found with Nord is just the best performing in the market. Similarly with Bitdefender, it's particularly strong on antivirus and malware. And we don't see the point of reinventing the wheel here, Ben. Right?
Yeah.
We have integrated the best technologies. We've taken Bitdefender's libraries and then added our extra bit around malware, real-time malware protection, to just make it more effective in our environment. For us, though, coming back to it, is just that user experience that changes everything. Uber doesn't own a single taxi, but it's made it very easy for you to buy taxis. And Airbnb doesn't own a room. And they have just changed the world in that user experience and user interface. And for us, we just think that you will engage better if you have the conversational, easy to understand user experience that Clario delivers. And by bringing the best-in-class products to bear, will be the best performing all-round provider in this marketplace.
It's certainly a goal worth reaching for, and I'm looking at some of your other some of your other key points here. One of them that stands out to me, and this is something that we've recommended on the show for a long time. I'm interested how you kind of handle it within your application. Even though Computer America is supported by ads, we still recommend ad blocking because so many times one of the most popular vectors of I guess infection for people is that they websites, they maintain their own code pretty well. They may do everything good on their back end, but then they integrate with an ad provider, and all it takes is one person to inject some kind of code into the ad provider, and they don't just infect one website, they infect thousands of websites who will serve that ad to customers. So ads are actually one of the most, I mean, like banner ads and things like that, are one of the most popular ways to infect just everyday people. So as a security point, we recommend ad blocking and, of course, blocking cookies, cookies are kind of going by the wayside, but trackers or things like that. How do you handle that? And I'm guessing it's for the same reason that we kind of advocate against it?
Yeah, for exactly the same reason. I mean, it's interesting. A lot of people that might be listening are Apple users, and Apple do so much to protect you from antivirus. And if you look at the attacks in the Apple environment, they've grown about 600% in the last few years. And a lot of the attack vector for Apple is via malware and feeding ads to you via anything you've downloaded. So we are scanning every app you download. We're scanning everything that you bring onto your device to protect you from these things, but also then blocking ads. At a very high level, Ben, it doesn't seem that bad as it. Somebody says, look, you're planning a skiing holiday, I'll serve up some ski gear to you. And you kind of, at a very simple level, that sounds sort of okay.
Yeah.
But it was a recent, I don't know if you saw recently, but a couple of major players in this market who offer free antivirus. It's just been discovered that they were selling your data. Now, it's something all readers ought to think about, all listeners ought to think about, is anything free is nonsense. They have to make their money some way. Most of the time it's on data.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody that's tracking what you're doing, you're not even aware why they're tracking you, what they're selling to third parties. And what
It's
those third parties are
it's
aggregating.
almost ironic because that is exactly what you're hoping to protect is your data. And
Yeah.
then, even to the point where, a hacker may be able to get your username and password. Not only are you losing probably like your username and your email address, but also on top of that, your browsing data and, so on and so forth. You might be losing more data trying to be safe than you are, if you were actually compromised.
Yeah, but one of the things they're also doing is things like saying, right, I know you like this particular product. So
Right.
they can then create something that says, next time you go to that website, I'll be waiting on the front of that website and I'll redirect your traffic. So they are very much personalizing cybercrime. So if they're aware of your profile and what you do and what you buy, it's so much easier then for them to really take over your ID and do much more malicious damage to you.
It's certainly a problem that continues to grow, and it's something that, like you said, if you are paying for the service directly, then they're probably making money off you in some manner. Hey, that's and of course one of the big things with the VPN I wanted to take note of was NordVPN. They're very good. They're very good at what they do, and they don't. They're like there are a lot of VPNs out there that are free that either one make the user experience so awful that you have to pay for it, or two they sell your data. Your VPN provider sells your data. NordVPN doesn't do that, so I was happy that you went with them. So with that being said, I mean all this. And like you said, this kind of happens in the background. One other feature I saw was kind of like a status report, like a health check,
Yeah.
and I should say like a digital security health check. What area? And we won't go into exactly how that works, but what areas have you found through doing this? Do people really need to kind of beef up on? Is it simply password? Is it reusing the same username? I mean, where are you finding people fall short?
Yeah, we're constant. So the dashboard will continually update your activity and things that we find. So we'll let you know any attempted intrusions and where they've come from. And we'll also make some recommendations around some machine learning about how you change your behavior. Passwords are classic, but it's super complicated, Ben. I know some people have left companies because they said we've run out of passwords to remember, right? So, I think it's by disguising your data through things like VPN, by making sure that you don't click on the wrong things that come into your world via applications you download, via websites you visit, or via emails you receive. That level of protection is super important as well. And if we are letting you know how often that happens, you'll become even more diligent because the biggest threat is you, really, because you'll do something you know that you shouldn't do, and that's just user error, right? So it's our lives are so quick, it's so fast, we trade convenience for risk. So we're trying to just make this as simple as we can and as foolproof as we can for users. Our big approach here is we want to be the consumer champion. We want to just draw attention to companies misusing data, governments failing to inform consumers, and then making the consumer aware by taking the jargon out. And by the way, we do that on our contracts, we do that on our cookies. Everything on our site is about being a consumer champion, and that's a core of our belief, putting the consumer first.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're coming into this with a consumer first mentality because, like we mentioned, businesses seem to take the cake when or kind of take a lot of people's or cybersecurity companies' minds, protect the businesses, protect the people, but of course businesses don't have even their own customers in mind. They have their own reputation in mind when it comes to vulnerability. So I'm happy that you're coming at this with that point of view. Real quick, so you mentioned middle of the month, in like a week or two, you're looking to, have like an early preview for Mac, iPad, platforms such as that. And then of course, Android and Windows coming later on down the year. Let's talk about price? Because obviously this will be a service. Are you looking at a subscription model, one-time purchase? Is this, hey, maybe free? And then we have to talk about some of the ways that you're going to make money. But how much were you thinking a service like this would cost?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ben. We'll fine tune some of this, but the kind of price, and just to put this into perspective, is the sort of price you pay for insurance on your iPhone,
Mm-hmm.
or the price you pay for a music service, right? And this is protecting every aspect of your life and giving you 24/7 support. So at the moment, we're looking at about $16 a month, and that includes every aspect of the product. And we deliberately don't break it down to allow you to say, I only want 3 of those things,
Right.
because that doesn't protect you. So we want you to feel safe online and almost put this to the back of your mind, and we'll just protect your digital life. And for $16 a month, you pay more or similar fees for music downloads and various other things, plus insurance on phones. So we think that's a very reasonable price for such a complete service.
It's something that I think that you could get something a little bit cheaper from your competitors, but something that I have not heard in a long time is, again, kind of the ability to pick up a phone and call someone and say, hey, I'm having this issue. Can you help me out? And I think that alone is worth the $16 a month, let alone, the total security package that you're promising here. That's something else. It's different.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And that's a very good point. But something I want to mention on that support, that support is also triggered to react to something that's gone wrong in your digital life. So it doesn't just mean you found something, let me ring somebody. This is us saying, Ben, we need to speak to you, right? So that comes from something we discover that technology can't prevent. And, that sometimes could take us 20 minutes to solve that problem. It could take us 3 or 4 hours to solve that problem. So, that's a very sophisticated offering that we're giving to people to protect them.
For sure. And of course, this is and right now, I believe I read somewhere it was like five different users. So if you have 5 computers, laptop, desktop, so on and so forth, essentially 5 licenses for one household is what you're looking at. So pretty obvious there. But of course, like we talked about earlier, the Internet of Things, this idea that almost everything in your house is going to be protected, is I saw that you have like network monitoring. Even though, let's say, I don't buy a user license for my smart cat litter box, you'll be monitoring the internet traffic, and it will still protect, I guess, the network that my computer is connected to, or at least it will give me alerts on my network, correct?
Yeah, we're looking at all types of attempted intrusions through any device. So if anything unusual happens on your network, we're looking at that, trying to either block it or saying, right, something's very unusual here. What is it? And, at that time, sometimes it'll be us contacting you going, Ben, let us correct all the settings on your IoT if that's what we need to do for you. Because one of the FBI suggestions was to look at every IoT device and change its settings. Well, that's quite a complicated thing for 90% of the population. And the other 10% are probably quite happy to do that themselves. So we'll help you protect yourself in those environments as well.
I got you. And by the way, for anyone watching the video portion, I'm just kind of poking through your terms and conditions and things like that. It did actually, and I see here that, you promised not to engage in essentially chain letters or unsolicited emails or essentially doing bad things yourselves. And that actually reminded me of a funny anecdote that there were. I think it was actually like a state-sponsored thing where a government agency was trying to develop malware, because some malware is developed by state agencies, and they were using anti-malware on their own computer where they were developing the malware, and every time they created something, a snippet was sent to the anti-malware protection service, and they were essentially alerting the anti-malware community about the malware that they were actively developing. So I don't know why I remember that, but that was a very funny story. But, again, just a very, very quick glance. Nothing too uncommon here. And really, what you're trying to do needs to be done. You're coming at it from a little bit of a different angle. And I got to say, I have really enjoyed this conversation. And Alun, I'm going to let you have kind of the last word here. Is there anything that we didn't touch on? Anything that you feel like we should mention before we kind of wrap this up?
Ben, we covered most of it. I think just as a simple point of principle, we believe that your data and your privacy is a human right, and it's valuable to you. And anybody that abuses that data without your permission, by complicated cookies or tracking data they shouldn't track, just with even not considering cybercrime, is just wrong. So we want to put every aspect of this right, from digital security, but also your privacy. It's your choice. It's your human right how you allow other people to use your data. And it should never be disguised. It should be totally transparent. And we just want users, and we want the community out there to start thinking about this very, very seriously, because consequences are significant. And the consequence for the family too. We need to teach young people about cybersecurity, to protect the Instagram pictures that they post and the Facebook pictures that they post, because Facebook has been hacked quite a large number of times, as everybody knows from the press. And it's very important that people start thinking about safety online, and we want to help people with that process as well.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that. That's something that I'm not the oldest individual, in the tech space, but I'm one of those people that say that kids today don't pay attention to cybersecurity and things like that. And there's a very clear reason, is that tech companies have become very good at the user experience. It's very simple, intuitive, easy. I'm sure that you come from a pedigree back in the 80s and in the 90s in the tech industry, where you had to be pretty tech savvy to use a lot, to use the internet, to talk with other people. It's not that way anymore. Technology just works, and that's a good thing. You don't want people to have masters in computer science just to be able to, be on Facebook. But that, of course, means that when you lower the barrier to entry, that means that so many more people are going to be vulnerable to even the most basic of issues. So you have hit that nail on the head, and I think something with Clario, you have something very, very unique here, and I'm very happy I've had this chance to talk with you. If people want to find out more information, where's the best place they can go?
You mentioned it earlier, so it's clario.co. So that's the easiest thing. You'll see a lot of information on the website, blogs. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, but clario.co is probably the best place, and you'll see the video. And you'll also be able to sign up for our early programs, beta programs as well, if people want to do that. The product will be on general release around June time across all the devices you mentioned earlier, all the mobile devices, plus Apple desktop, and then Windows towards the end of the year. But
Sure.
listen, Ben, it's been a fantastic conversation, and you're very knowledgeable about it too. So that's helped me. So thank you very much for being such a great host.
Thank you. I have a very surface level of a lot of knowledge. Just don't scratch the surface. That's where things get tricky. But I got to say, it was a very fun conversation. I'm of course going to sign up for updates. But if you like to reach out and either come back on when we're in full release, we'd love to have you back on and talk about this again and what's changed, what's new, and of course, everyone, computeramerica.com. We'll have a link in the show notes to clario.co, or just go ahead, visit there yourself. And everyone, Mr. Alun Baker, CEO of course, Clario. And Alun, we're actually going to wrap up the show here with computer technology news, but we're going to say good day to you. Thank you for joining us. I hope, hopefully there's a lot more skiing in the near future for you. And we gotta get back to work. But thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to talking to you again.
And thank you to your listeners for listening. Thank you very much, Ben. Cheers.
All right. Cheers. Have a good one. Bye-bye. And everyone, Here we go. We're going to go ahead and continue on here. So everyone, we're going to go ahead and do computer and technology news. That is, of course, brought to you by Computer America. And so let's see. I forgot to play the jingle. Excuse me. What am I thinking? Here we go. So So everyone, Computer Technology News brought to you by Computer America. Now, our first story that we're going to do, why don't we go ahead and just, start with a story that we already mentioned during last segment. This has to do with, of course, look, they're actually using footage from, CES. So, they said that, Google may have accidentally sent photos and videos to strangers. Now, if you're wondering how big of a problem this is actually going to be, well, it has to do with, Google Photos are everywhere. If you're using an Android phone, then they come natively on Android phones. You're looking at about 1 billion users. And of course, the real extent of this, I'm going to say, is in the number of probably hundreds, maybe thousands, which doesn't seem like that much. But, when you have 1 billion possible users, you may have, skirted disaster this time. Next time, we'll certainly find out. Google has recently notified Google Photo users that due to a technical issue, they said that some users' private videos were incorrectly exported to unrelated users' archives. There we go. So, as we said before, the technical glitch happened November 21st and was found 4 days later, November 25th. They said that it apparently only infected users who use Google Takeout to request a download your data export, which included content stored in Google Photos. On the flip side, users who downloaded their data now possibly have someone else's videos in their archive, which, by the way, may actually be incomplete. So, not only, let's say they wanted to download their photos and videos from Google servers before they deleted them. Let's say they downloaded them all, looked like they had all of them there, and deleted all of them off Google servers. If they turn around and say, oh wait, these aren't actually mine, and on top of that, I really want mine, if they deleted them, then there's a possibility they deleted the only copy. Not good. So the number of users who use Google Takeout to download their data in the 5-day period is relatively small. They said that only about 0.01% of photos users attempting takeout were affected. Still, as we mentioned, 1 billion users as of last July. That number is not negligible. Even 1% of 1 billion, you're looking at, what is that? 1 million? No, 10 million. 10 million, and then let's say 1/10 of that is 1 million, 1/10 of that is about 100,000. But then how many of that 100,000 were actually attempting to use Google Takeout to take down their Google Photos? That number, as I said, is probably in the hundreds or probably low thousands. Still, this is a very big issue that could have turned out worse than it actually did. So we're thankful that it didn't. Now, with that being said, that's story number one. Story number two, let's go ahead and, okay, this one, it's pretty interesting. So, cell phone radiation. This is why some of the people are using the little Bluetooth Bluetooth earpieces, headsets, to talk on their phones, because they're afraid that if they hold their phone up to their head, they're going to get brain cancer. I've been a very large skeptic of, and I'm not talking about weight-wise, I've been very skeptical about individuals who claim that cell phone radiation causes cancer. Don't get me wrong, prolonged exposure to radiation can cause cancer. The problem is the dosage level and what is healthy, what is not healthy. And you can look at this from a couple different ways. This is an article saying that scientists sue the FCC for dismissing studies linking cell phone radiation to cancer. I've never been one of the ones who, really, how do you put this? Who really think that large government agencies are out to deceive us. So I'm already on the back foot compared to a lot of people who push this kind of thing. So let's go ahead and get to the meat of this. because we're about to run out of time, but the FCC is ignoring the recommendations of our nation's largest organization of children's doctors, the American Academy of Pediatrics. And they said that knowing that the physician-led group asked the FCC to test phones in the way that we use them, in position against the body, and the FCC said it was unnecessary. And so one of my big issues here is that they have the lawsuits and they have all this here, but they don't actually have a link to the study that they are, that they don't have a link to the study to which they're referring to. They have a lot of excerpts, they have expert, kind of testimony, but the link that they kind of reference, but they never link to, has been dismissed before as using junk science. It's just not an accurate way to actually, measure the amount of radiation and things like that. Essentially what they do is they just bombard something with just an insane amount of radiation, and it unfortunately just doesn't really work that way. You can't just dump a lifetime of radiation and say, oh look, the radiation affected them. No, you're not doing it in the right dosage and things like that. So I still am in the camp that cell phone radiation does not cause cancer or any kind of harm for that matter. If there were reputable sources, I am more than willing to change my position. I am not a cell phone provider. I do not make cell phones. I would love the best information to give our audience on this topic. Should you be afraid of your cell phones? No, you should not. But will I definitely keep an eye on it? Yes. And should you keep an eye on Computer America? Absolutely. Everyone, that's about it for today. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to Computer America, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, Clario, for joining us. And everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.